Welcome to Commander Central, episode 16, The Future of EDH, where we peer deeply into our crystal ball and look at things to come. Will we have flying cars? Will we have a president who doesn't sound like he has a head injury? Will Cyclonic Rift be banned? We're going to find out. This is Commander Central, and I'm Dana.
I'm Max.
And I'm Chris.
How is everyone doing this fine Wednesday?
Pretty good.
Could be better.
Figured we should talk about the present before we get into the future. So
Right. Yeah. I guess I really don't want to talk about what happened aside from the fact that we got a family member in the hospital who's fell off of a roof and is in bad shape. I'll leave it at that.
All right. Well, that's bad news, but the weather's nice at least. It feels like fall versus winter. That's something. My furnace was working, and Max's
Is working.
Max is in the interim. Since mine broke, Max's broke and has been fixed. So, Chris, you're next.
Nope, ain't happened. It happened like 3 years ago, so we're good.
All right, so you're fine there. Anything else exciting going on for anybody?
No, I'm getting addicted to World of Warcraft again, though.
I signed up.
Shame.
I signed up again yesterday and played for about an hour, and I'm gonna ease back into it over the winter.
When I re-signed up, it must have been September or something like that, and I played about 10 minutes and decided that I didn't like the way that the game was going, so I stopped. But I am waiting. They are supposedly releasing vanilla servers.
Yes.
Yep.
And if they do that, I will probably be something that I jump on.
I'm gonna start a character with my son, I think, this weekend, because he's played like my characters before, just goofing around, but he's never started one himself and played it. So I think we're both gonna start level 1 tunes this weekend and try. So that'll be something fun to do.
What classes?
I have not figured it out yet. I'm gonna take a healer, probably a shaman, because I've never really played a shaman before.
Oh, shaman healers are so much fun.
So that way I can kind of keep him alive when we're playing. So I'm not sure what he's gonna do yet. I think we're gonna do like, I'll basically have him pick one and start it, and we'll do like 10 minutes, then say, okay, try something else till he figures out what he likes. So
Okay.
That makes sense.
that is the plan. All right, well, let's talk about Magic a little bit. How about games this week? Anyone have some fun games?
I don't really have any.
You missed last night's Commander. We did play a game with my next door neighbor. Max came over and we played last week.
That's right.
Those are fun games.
They are.
We had one situation where he was playing
Ur-Dragon.
the Ur-Dragon deck, and he had was it Palace Siege? Is the Black Siege, where at the beginning of your upkeep you can bring a creature back from your graveyard to your hand.
Or I think
Or
the other
each
one
opponent loses 2 life, and you gain 2 life.
And he had it on the creature mode, and he brought back Steel Hellkite.
A dozen times?
Yeah, like literally every turn he's bringing back Steel Hellkite and having to recast it.
Or Utvara.
Uvara came back a couple times.
Yep.
But Steel Hellkite was the funny one because it came back like 6 turns in a row.
And you guys let this keep going?
Well, he kept killing it. And then it would die and go to the graveyard, and he'd have to bring it back next turn and recast it again.
I had
And
no
we'd kill it
enchantment
again.
removal at all.
But we all had reasons we didn't want it hitting us because we all had like, a couple low CMC things out that it would blow up. So like everyone was just trying to keep it off the board as long as possible. So that was kind of goofy to see. There was a game last week where playing against a Kalia deck and had an Obliterate cast with Kalia out, or with Avacyn out.
Okay.
And the Avacyn player cast Obliterate, and I had 7 mana free and a Rift in hand. So I got to bounce all his stuff back to hand, and then I had enchantments out, and it doesn't hit any of my enchantments. I can't remember what I had him play, but then I was able to like win the game in like 3 turns because I was able to get ahead enough. One was Frontier Siege, which gave me mana.
Oh.
And everyone else just like was, because he had no plan because he didn't have lands in hand, because he's like, I'm just going to obliterate and win the game. I'm like, no, you're not. You're going to get rifted.
Well, at least he played that the smart way instead of just...
He did. It was not like a douche rift or douche obliterate. It was, he was planning on winning the game. But
yeah, he pretty much thought where I'm going to drop this and I'm going to look at you guys across from the table and be like, you guys just want to scoop here?
I went over and played a game with my neighbors without Max at a different point in time. And somebody was playing a Duretti deck, my friend Mike, and he kicked the emblem off really quickly because we didn't really see it coming. I don't know what happened, but like he kept rolling Duretti up, and we were distracted, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh man, it's at 10. So he hit Duretti's emblem really quickly.
Oh no!
And for those that don't know, the Duretti Planeswalker emblem is whenever an artifact goes into your graveyard at the end of your turn, it comes back into play.
Yep, any artifact.
And
In any turn.
yeah. So it just so happened the deck I was playing was my mono white Planeswalker deck. And I have a Raito Lantern in the deck, which for 3 mana you can put a card from a graveyard on the bottom of its owner's library. And I use it in that deck to put planeswalkers back into my library after they get killed so that I can tutor them back up with Jeru and put them back into play. So I happen to have that out, and he, I can't remember what he sacrificed or did with Dread. He's like, oh, now you can bring it back. I'm like, oh, that's targeted. It's not just my graveyard, it's any graveyard. So I'm like, 3 mana. It's like I was able to keep him in check with that Duretti emblem using Rito Lantern, which is not a good card outside of maybe that Dejero deck.
That's bonkers, but yeah,
But it just so happened I was playing the deck that was running it and had it in play, and I'd had a mana double out, so I had plenty of mana, and I was able to keep any artifacts he dealt with tucked back into his library through pure luck.
That's just skill there. That ain't luck.
Yep.
Right. Yeah.
Deck building 201 right there.
So everyone,
isn't it called 101?
No, it's the second level.
Second level with Rito Lantern. That's advanced. I saw a game last night with a turn 3 kill.
Oh.
With Vona, the new commander.
Okay.
The new black-white one. And it was 2 friends, so no one was mad about it. But it was a turn 1 land Soul Ring Signet, which happens and is always awful to see, but okay, whatever. Turn 2 land, and he played Vona. Turn 3 turns and swings at his friend with Vona. And his friend had 2 blockers. He had a Birds of Paradise and some other kind of, I think a Wood Elves.
Okay.
He played in turn 2. So he had blockers. And he's like, oh, let's take the 4. Doesn't want to swings for 4. And it's like, boom, hatred.
Oh, no.
And I was like, wow, well, I guess I'm just dead. But no, Vona has lifelink, so we got all the life back he paid for hatred.
Yep.
And then wound up killing the table like probably 5 or 6 turns later in the same deck with Phyrexian Unlife in play, and then cast Ad Nauseam, and Ad Nauseam down into Repay in Kind. It's like, yeah, well, that's the end of that game. So his friend didn't have to sit up for too awful long, but it was funny to see just ridiculous things happen. I played a game with Chris.
Yeah.
Now, this was not a skill.
I want to apologize to you for that game where I
we had 2
Price
games.
of Progress you.
We had 2 games first. You Price of Progress, and everyone died.
Yep.
So it was just everyone lost, no one won.
Yeah, it seemed kind of like a cheap way to go, but I wasn't doing anything in the game, so.
And we played a second game where I was playing my Vela deck, who I've now switched to an artifact deck, and it played much better than it did as a morph deck.
Yep, I noticed that immediately.
So I wound up killing I killed all 3 of you, but the first one was somebody had, because of your Bloodchief Ascension.
Oh, yes, I remember this.
So Chris had a Bloodchief Ascension in play with all the counters, and Bloodchief Ascension deals 2 damage to you for every card you put in your graveyard.
Yep, whenever a card enters the graveyard.
So Chris had that out. I was just kind of sitting there minding my own business, playing my deck. The other 2 guys were butting heads, basically. One of whom was playing a Sign of the Ur-Dragon deck, and one of whom was playing, I think it was Kess.
Yes.
And the Scion player swung at the Kess player, who had just drawn a bunch of cards, because first he kicked Rider Replication onto
your Sad Robot.
On Sad Robot, and then all the tokens died. So he had ramped 5 lands, drew 5 cards or something.
Wow.
So then Scion swings and does the Sign ability to turn it into Nicol Bolas.
Uh-oh.
Which hits and makes you discard your card. So you discard first of all, he takes 7 damage from Bolas, and then has to pitch his entire hand.
Yep.
Each card of which deals 2 damage.
21 damage he ended up taking in 1 shot.
So it took him down to 1, I think. He was at 1 life. So it came to my turn. I killed him with a Thopter token just because I could.
A pity kill.
And then it came back around. Chris wasn't doing much aside from that Bloodchief Ascension. Came back around to the Scion player, and he had a choice between who to swing at, and he swung at you.
Yep.
And I did have I had tokens in play and a few things. So it came back around to me, and his life total was at exactly 20, and I had but he made dragon tokens with Udvara Hellkite.
Yes, he did.
So he had blockers.
Okay.
But we had just been talking about Intimidate like 2 minutes earlier. And I played my commander and swung at him with exactly 20 damage, which is what I had. And he's like, okay, I'm going to block this one. And I'm like, I kind of to be a jerk because he's a friend of mine too. I'm like, so how are you going to block these guys? And I let him assign all his blockers. I was like, so they all have Intimidate, by the way. And he's like, oh. And I hit him for exactly 20.
And it was literally him who you were talking to about Intimidate,
yes,
too.
Yes, we were having a conversation, and he immediately forgot about it.
Oopsie.
So that's down to Chris and I, and Chris plays Havoc Festival.
Yeah.
And he had gained a ton of life off of
The Blood Chief.
so he was way ahead of me. Havoc Fest, you lose half your life and you can't gain life. So I was not going to be able. You were going to kill. I was going to die just because that would have.
I had to jam that to save me from your worm coil, because if you started gaining life, I wasn't going to get back out of there.
And I top decked. It wasn't Red Replication. It was Infinite Reflection.
Yes.
Which makes a copy of all my. So I made them all a copy of Vela, which killed all my creatures, but it triggered
and just nuked me out.
Like 56 damage or something.
That's a fun way to go.
That was a good game.
That was different. It's just like they all died. I'm like, okay, they all die, and I'm reading. Like, okay, explain to me how this works now.
They all become Vela.
Yep, and they all see each other. Yep,
and they all trigger off of each other.
So that made me feel good about the deck, because I was able to kill people with beats, but I also had other ways to deal damage too. So I'm liking that deck. And I posted a picture of that setup with the Infinite Reflection on social media. So that is out there if you want to look.
You can find us on Twitter at CMDR Central. Facebook, search us up at CMDR Central, which we did change just so everybody knows. And then you can search us up online, cmdrcentral.com.
Do we have any feedback from anybody this week, Chris?
Yes, I'm going to pull this up right now, and I'm terribly sorry, my friend. I'm going to butcher your name, and I hope you harass me hard for it, too. So we heard from Jonas Kleinuder. If I pronounced it wrong, feel free to just, harass me all day long on Facebook. I'm totally fine with it.
We actually got out a translator to try to figure out what it was, the pronunciation. But
yeah, we spent the first 10 minutes on... What were we looking up, Max? What site were you on?
The first result Google gave me, so
Okay.
I don't even know.
I can go ask my coworker again, like, hey, you speak German, right? She's like, no, I speak Portuguese. How many times do you have to do this?
So we heard from him. He said, hey, guys, I just discovered your podcast on EDH Rec, and am now binge listening your episodes. My question, you mention your different decks all the time, and I wonder if there are deck lists somewhere on Tapped Out or Deck Stats. And he also says, greetings from Germany.
Well, greetings back to you in Germany. We did put our deck lists up on social media, on Facebook, and I think on Twitter.
I think just Facebook.
I know
Just
it's Facebook
Facebook
for sure.
Okay, so they are out there. If they're not on Twitter, we'll put them on Twitter as well.
And we'll try to find a spot for them on our website.
Sure, yeah, I'll put them there as well.
That'd be a good place.
And
to
for
put 'em.
everyone to know, I will get all my Tapped Out up to date.
Me too.
I did like your little thing on there. It's like Max's should be up to date. Chris's not so sure.
I think you only had one up there anyway.
Yeah, I haven't put up my other ones because as of recently, Tapped Out was kind of being goofy. So
It's been better the last week. So
Yep.
Not really much in the way of news this week, I think, either. Is there, Max?
No, not much. But of course, you can also find us on Patreon by searching CMDR Central. And we want to give our shout out to our newest Patreon subscriber, Mr. Plorg. We thank you for your contribution to the show, and we hope you enjoy, and we want to hear more from you.
We appreciate any Patreon help we can get. We're not trying to make a lot of money. This isn't about that.
Oh, I put my 2 weeks in.
You've already quit your job.
Crap.
whoa.
If we could, just cover the hosting expenses.
Right.
That's all we're trying to do here is break even on hosting, and because this is fun to do, we're not trying to turn it into anything it isn't. But any help we can get, we really appreciate it. Thank you very much. So for the show this week, we're going to talk about the future. So this was inspired, like that special effect, Chris. It's very impressive. So there's a couple things that inspired this topic. Before we started recording this podcast, we used to get together before we played Magic, and we had dinner and beer before we played EDH on Tuesdays. And we'd just talk about basically Commander the whole time. And one of the things that came up,
I was going to say, I do miss those days because the whole, $7 for a full meal was wonderful.
that was a great place
Right.
to eat. It's no longer near our current store, but that was nice. I agree. And one of the things that came up at one point in time was we were talking about the tuck rule. This was back when it was still, you could still tuck a commander. And one of the things that I said, and it came up between all of us, was they're going to have to deal with tuck at some point, because every time they add new tuck cards, it is a bigger and bigger problem where your commander is going to get put away to a point where it's really tough to retrieve. I didn't think that they were going to change it immediately. And then, of course, 2 weeks later, they did. But that was a conversation we had about, at some point, the game is going to have to take a look at tuck. So the second kind of inspiration here was from show 12 we did.
And that was on planeswalkers. And we discussed in that show quite a bit about how planeswalkers impact EDH. And the biggest thing we touched on was needing more removal, since we get more planeswalkers with every new set. I mean, we're already in the triple digits, and you have the players that play them because they fit their deck perfectly, and you have the players that play them because they're planeswalkers and they just like to run them.
It's a religion.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, people like planeswalkers for sure.
So it's definitely something going forward we need to take into account when the game evolves.
And the third thing, and we kind of touched on this slightly, talking about utility lands, but we had two listeners, James Arnquist, who's at JJJJamesSS47, and Lion Langer, who's at Cora X Spec Op. And they hit us up on Facebook and Twitter, and we talked a little bit briefly about the Ixalan utility lands and whether those have pushed things to the point where you need to run more land removal. So those three topics are going to make us talk about where we think the game is going in the future. We're not going to be like predicting they're going to make a Jace that does this or something. We're going to talk about the game as a whole and if we're seeing trends and changes that we perhaps need to start dealing with and adjusting to. So the first ones to talk about, we'll hit up right away, are the ones we just mentioned before we get into anything new, and that's planeswalkers. So that's changed the game already. Like in the last year or two or three, planeswalkers you have to adjust to them. You have to have a plan.
To a point, I would see. But for me personally, I don't think planeswalkers are that powerful in Commander. It really takes a certain one to change the board state.
I don't know if they're powerful in terms of like, oh my God, it's broken. But I think they're there in a way that they're just physically cards that you have to deal with in a way that maybe you didn't have to 3 years ago. Yeah,
and again, I think it kind of relates to what I said earlier. If the Planeswalker is there to make the deck more cohesive, it's there for a purpose. So like a Venser in a Blink deck, it's there for a purpose. You want to get rid of that versus jamming any Jace into a blue deck just because it's Jace. I think depending on what the deck does is how you judge if the Planeswalker needs to be taken care of or not.
When I first started playing, I saw two different people playing Tybalts in their EDH decks. Not because Tybalt was necessarily good or anything, but like at that point in time, there's 15 Planeswalkers maybe, and there just weren't a lot. If you wanted to like put a Planeswalker in a deck just to try it out, there weren't a lot of options, and some of them were bad, like Tybalt was.
And there was like hardly any removal neither.
Right. Whereas today, there's so many good Planeswalkers. If you want to throw a Planeswalker in a deck, it's probably going to be a good one.
Yep.
And that just wasn't the case back when someone's going to jam Tybalt.
And it's still not Tybalt.
Right, yeah. Tybalt's still not a good one. He's the best dressed Planeswalker, though.
Oh, snap.
So I don't. That's not going to change, I don't think. Do you guys foresee that changing at all?
No. I think they're still going to print them, and people are still going to play them because they do cool things or they just want to.
And they're now legendaries. Not only were they already good, but now you no longer have to worry about your two Jaces blowing each other up.
Yep.
And you can now fetch your Planeswalker with
Call of the Gatewatch.
Yeah.
Captain Sisay.
Captain Sisay can grab your Planeswalker. You draw a card off Reki. So they've also gotten better.
Well, that's an understatement.
And that's just moving forward. That's part of the game in a way that it wasn't as much 3 years ago.
Just even a year ago, I don't think it was as bad as it is now.
You're probably right.
Yeah, I think the big spike kind of happened right after Chainveil got printed, and people realized how synergistic that can be in decks.
Right in a cluster, you had Chainveil, you had the Teferi Planeswalker from the mono blue decks.
Yep.
Then you had the Ajani
from M15, the one that does loyalty for each
the one
Planeswalker.
So you had three cards like right in a cluster that all made Planeswalkers better and buffed them in a way too. That didn't hurt at all. So.
And then in the last couple years in Standard, we've gotten all the oaths.
Yeah.
Which again help Planeswalkers in some way.
Yep.
So I think that's enough about Planeswalkers. We did a whole show on it. So if you want to hear more, listen to that show.
Yep. Episode 12.
Utility lands we also talked about on a show, but we'll touch on that
just
briefly.
Recently too.
Yes, we did. But like in the last, I went and looked through, and in the last 18 months, Growing Rights of Itlimoc has came into play. Well, all the there's a bunch of good flip ones. Growing Rights, Dowsing Dagger, Primal Amulet, Thematic Compass. Those are probably the 4 best ones. But they're almost all playable. Like of those 10 flips out of Ixalan, they're all pretty decent. Scavenger Grounds and Outer Devastation is a legit good graveyard hate card in colors that don't have it. Inventors Fair and Architect decks, Artifact decks. Handweir Battlements as a haste enabler from Eldritch Moon, and Westvale Abbey.
It's a boss.
Is
Yeah,
an
it
awesome
is.
card.
I've
And
won a
that's in the
game with
last
that.
that's in the last year and a half. And we've already seen Storm the Vaults from Rivals, which is a flip Tolarian Academy.
I really hope that was fake. I really do.
It's
not.
It's not. That's real.
I'm curious if it's going to get the ban hammer immediately.
The fact that it's red, I don't think so. It's red blue, so that limits you. Although that's great in Brea.
Yep.
But
And I know Sheldon Menery on Twitter flat out said it is no Tolarian Academy. So I think that's already kind of a hint of until we see it in action, we aren't going to do anything about it.
Okay.
it's going to be annoying in Brea for sure.
It's going to be annoying in anything that runs a bunch of artifacts.
But that's one. That's one of the probably 10 of those flips. We're going to get probably 10 more flips.
I bet we
bet.
get 5
I think 5. Okay.
because they're
Still.
2 colors.
Oh, I suppose. Well, we could get enemy pairs as well, but this one is an enemy pair.
Yep.
So
And it's just odd because I'm trying to think of the tribes from Ixalan itself. Red and blue, that's what, pirates
Yeah.
and merfolk?
Pirates.
because Merfolk
Oh.
is green blue.
Okay.
Yep. Fish people
Fish people.
who turn mountains into sea. I don't know how it works.
One day we'll figure that out for
yeah,
you.
I don't understand it.
So the question there with these utility lands getting better and getting more and more useful, do you need to run more land removal? I do. I'm gonna start going up to 3 in
See,
my decks.
I haven't. And honestly, I haven't really seen too many of them that bother me.
Well, now last night, in 3 games, I decided to pay attention to this. In one game, we had a flipped rights and a real guy's cradle. The two different people had.
God.
And then
2 different people.
two
Okay.
different people.
I thought it was the same one. I was like,
No.
oh,
2 different people at least.
who needs channel when you got that going on?
Frank.
Right. Yeah, right. In the next game, I saw a Dark Depths, 2 Glacial Chasms, and I had a Nykthos out that I was tapping for. I think at one point I tapped it for 12 blue mana. Every one of those should have been removed, and a couple of them were, but like you want to kill every single one of those lands in that situation. So I think we've hit a density of lands where at least I want to have answers at all points in time. And that's still, Valkud is still a thing, and
Yep.
Urborg is still a thing, and Cabal Coffers, and there's just a lot of really good lands out there, and there's even more now.
I guess I haven't noticed, really, besides you, a lot of the people running the new Ixalan flips.
Yeah, I haven't seen it neither. That's why I haven't
Yeah.
done anything about it.
I mean, I have the dagger in one of my decks, but that's it. And, I mean, I have your standard Nykthos and Cabal Coffers and Urborg and stuff, but besides Dana, I have not seen a lot of people run those Ixalan flip lands, and maybe they just aren't playing those decks when I play them, or maybe they just never draw them.
Primal Amulet has been a bomb. Whenever I've flipped it, every time I've had it out, and it's been disgusting.
Yeah, that's I hate that one.
And I've flipped Thematic Compass a couple times too, and that's been really effective. That's the better Maze of Ith.
Yep.
So I think if we get 5 or 10, however many we get, that's just that many more lands to deal with.
I wonder if they're going to print something coming up that's going to be able to take care of lands of some sort.
We did get, didn't we get a desert that you can sacrifice a desert, but it doesn't, it's like not as good Dust Bowl.
I think we did. I'm going to do some digging here, and we'll come
Well, I'm
back to
hoping
that.
for like another Ghost Quarter type of deal.
Maybe. I was actually thinking about Dust Bowl itself, because Dust Bowl, you don't have to sacrifice the Dust Bowl to kill the land, so you can repeatedly use it versus a Ghost Quarter, a Strip Mine, or Wasteland, whatever. So I'm kind of wondering if I don't want to maybe think about putting Dust Bowl in my decks. So instead of going to 3 lands, go to a Strip Mine and a Dust Bowl so I can reuse one of them.
See, I think the route of going that way is going to limit your deck building, because if you start going into 3 and 4 color decks, which is what I enjoy playing because it gives you more versatility and options, it hurts your land base. You can't really jam all those colorless lands in there.
Yeah, for sure.
So I just did a quick search on Scryfall. I searched for destroy target land, and in standard. I just looked at standard. There are currently 7 cards that destroy lands.
That's pretty good.
Creeping Mold from Kaladesh. Demolish from Ixalan. Field of Ruin is the one from Ixalan, where 2 sacrifice it, destroy target non-basic land an opponent controls. Each player searches his or her library for a basic land and puts it onto the battlefield. Then shuffle their library. Spreading Rot is in Ixalan. Starve Extinction destroys a land. And Violent Impact destroys a land. And then, let's see, for some reason it brought up Nicole Bolas the Deceiver. I'm not sure why. Oh, because it has non-land in it. And Vonus has non-land. So there's 6 cards that destroy lands in Standard right now.
And maybe you just need to run more spells. Maybe you can't just rely on lands. You need to actually run more land destruction spells.
Yep.
That could be. Do you foresee then, maybe in the future, if this becomes a big thing in the meta? I mean, not saying just ours, but every meta, where people start running your Obliterates, your Armageddons, and stuff like that. Not to be that type of player, but just because there's so many of them that I might as well just blow them all up. You ain't getting them back, and we'll just start over from here.
I don't think so, but
No.
maybe.
I think you're walking the fine line of just mass land destruction in general, and at least in our shop and the few other people we've talked to that aren't from our area, that's kind of still a no-go in most play groups. I mean, yeah, doing it for a purpose because you're going to win the game, that's different than doing it because I'm mad at you and I want to ruin everybody's night.
And you kind of brought this up talking about not wanting to run too many utility lands in terms of land destruction, but you just can only run so many. Like, there's only so many slots in your deck for these utility lands. So, sure, Growing Rights flipped is a really strong card, but you probably had to bump something else out to make room for it.
Yep.
So, it's 6 and 1/2 dozen of that, or maybe it's a situation that it self-regulates a little bit too, because you can just only run so many.
I think besides that, if we're really focusing just on these Ixalan ones, they're enchantments. They come in as an enchantment. You can react to the trigger of them flipping.
Yes, for sure.
So you can unravel them, you can cross and grip them, you can destroy the enchantment before the flip even happens. So, maybe you have to look at it that way. Now, the other utility lands like Westvale Abbey, your Nykthoses,
That's what you would end up saving your Strip Mines, Ghost Quarters for.
Yep. And to Chris's point of balancing the mana base, if I, knowing our meta at our local shop, I wouldn't maybe bump my decks up to 3. I think I'm going to leave them at 2. But going to, a GP or visiting a store that I've never been to, I'll probably bring that extra land destruction and swap it in, not knowing what I'm walking into.
Well, and even if I don't, and I haven't officially decided how I'm going to do it yet, but even if I don't go to 3, I had some decks that only had 1, and I'm definitely going to go to 2. So the couple decks that didn't have 2, I'm definitely going to go to 2. Okay, so how about the power level of the game as a whole? Because that's changing, I think. I think it's tough to argue against that. Just by virtue of, even if you only get 1 good card every expansion, there's 4 or 5 expansions a year. That's 4 or 5 cards that are upgrading your deck. I mean, your decks just get better by virtue of new cards coming out.
Yeah, I can't argue that at all.
No, and I mean, we get supplemental sets, so 2 of those 5 new cards are reprints that you probably never could get because they were printed back in right after the reserve list and they're super expensive. So like Mana Drain.
Yep.
Right.
And now, I mean, Iconic Masters is everywhere. I mean, it's at Walmart.
Right. There's a couple levels of that. There's new cards that come out that are just minor upgrades for your deck. There's cards that you couldn't afford to buy that you now can afford to buy. An example being, I picked up my first Mana Drain and put it in a deck, and it got cast last night.
Nice.
I didn't cast it.
Uh-oh.
The Gonti player took it.
I was going to ask.
So my Mana Drain has not yet been cast by me, but somebody else got to cast it. But that's a power creep thing. I mean, Mana Drain, I at $200, I didn't buy one, but at, what's it at, 90 now?
Yep.
And probably dropping a little bit. I picked one up then.
Well, we can just take an example of the new decks for this year compared to the original decks that were printed. The power level differences between them.
Yeah.
I think that relies a lot on, though, the fact that they have Eminence.
Yeah.
If none of those face cards had Eminence, I don't think they're that great.
No.
I mean, being able to do something from the command zone is amazing. I mean, we saw that with Aloro, and I never thought they'd do it again.
I didn't either.
Yeah, it was. But I mean, if you were to sleeve them up and just go head to head, the two straight up precons, the original precon against one of the new ones, the power level difference is huge. I mean, even just the
Yes.
cards in the deck itself.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
But not even just this year. Atraxa, Brea, and Maelstrom Wielder are all strong.
Yep.
Mizzix, Marin, Azuri are all really strong commanders. So they've just got they've also gotten better at making commanders.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, especially the face card's the one that's trying to sell the product. I think the backup ones can be hit or miss. I mean, that's just my opinion. I think some of the wizards aren't that great. And
Mathis, is that how you pronounce his name?
is that
I don't even remember.
is that
'cause
the
it's
Mardu-
that bad one?
Yeah.
is that the
3/3
counter guy?
I don't remember what he does. That's how bad he is.
when he puts a token on something and when it dies, everybody but its controller draws a card.
Yep.
Yeah.
He's Mardu Hugs.
You also have power creep just from people learning more about the game. Like EDH Rec is a great site and I love it, but it makes it easier to make a strong deck. Makes it easier to find cards for your deck that maybe you didn't know existed. That's not a bad thing, but it's a thing. It's a part of the game now.
Yes, I'm gonna argue that one and say yes, the power level of the deck's gone up, but I've noticed a lot of people I play against do not know how to play Magic very well. So
For
they
sure.
may have a super powerful deck, but you can still walk in with your cheap deck and play.
Yes, for sure.
I agree with that. I think EDH Rec is a fine line because you have the players like us that know pretty much 90 of the 100 cards that are going to go into a deck we're building, and we use it for those final 10 or something interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the players that use EDH Rec because, oh, I have the Ur Dragon, click.
Right.
I'm going to build it.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's, and you can't do anything about that. Like how do you alter that? You can't. When someone brings up their Mizzix deck, that's gonna go off just because it's Mizzix. It just when you cast it, if you've got some sorceries and instants, you're just gonna do really well. Or Ramos Dragon Engine. If you just cast Ramos and have a few other big spells in that deck, you're just gonna race so far ahead.
Oh, I love that card.
Or I was talking about the Ur Dragon. The Ur Dragon comes down, and you have like 2 dragons, and Ur Dragon comes down and swings. You just draw like 2 or 3 cards, and then put another big dragon in play. Like just putting it down creates such a huge advantage compared to how many bad legends exist before they were making them for Commander.
That's true. I wonder if the route that it's going, you're gonna have to sit down, have all the anxious, yeah, that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna play this, and you just look, and you're like, well, I'm not playing this one. I have to pull out one of my other decks.
That's
that's
definitely the solution. I think we've all kind of adapted where we have different decks with different power levels, and we know which ones we're going to play.
Well, that's when I sit down with you guys. I just pick a deck and go because I know that it's going to be
Competitive no matter what.
Yeah.
But
With
when
other players, I'm very cautious about that.
Me too. And, I think knowing your play group is one thing. And when you see that new player walk in your store, you adjust your power level, or we try to at least. If you catch me in a bad mood, maybe I won't.
And that's why I have Mogus just kind of slapped together, not really built for doing anything other than let's just have a fun game.
Sure.
I don't care if I win or not.
And just because cards become available doesn't necessarily mean everyone runs them. Mana Crypt went from, a cup, was it $150 or so?
Yeah.
Down to 60-ish. And I see Mana Crypt now, but it hasn't been one of those cards where everyone runs Mana Crypt now.
I still don't have one.
Yeah, but you could. If you wanted to put a Mana Crypt in your deck, you could get a couple of them. We all could. But
I've had them and pitched them away. I'm not a fan of it in a deck, to be honest with you. I'd rather run Ancient Tomb.
And if you're trying to run like an environment where you want to win by turn 4, it absolutely makes sense.
Yes.
But like people, you can also make the choice to not push your game in that direction. But that's something that people are going to have to make that choice more and more and more because every year that goes by, the game's just going to get tighter. So if you don't want to play that way, you have to make decisions to not play that way.
Maybe it's coming down to the point where, like for us personally, we're going to have to build that one hyper-tuned tweak deck, and when you're playing with certain people, that's what you're going to have to play.
Yeah, well, that kind of leads me to the next one on the list here that's the effect of 1v1 and competitive EDH on large multiplayer Commander, because you see people now, 1v1 has become a thing in a way it really wasn't before. Like French, I never saw anybody play French.
Nope.
But since the new multiplayer rules came out last summer, or the new 1v1 rules came out last summer, we have seen a lot more 1v1 Commander, but then those decks then make their way into multiplayer Commander. Just because if somebody only has that one deck and they want to play a multiplayer game, they just grab their 1v1 deck.
Yep.
And those decks are much tighter than the average Commander deck.
Which is surprising because a lot of your good cards are banned in 1v1 that you can play in a multiplayer deck. So if you were to tweak your multiplayer deck as tight as a 1v1 deck, you should be able to take that 1v1 deck all day long.
Yes.
You should be.
Yes.
But you'd have to make a choice to build that way.
Yep.
And a lot of the multiplayer decks aren't designed the way the 1v1 decks are, where you're like, I'm going to use every available cantrip I can to hit my combo piece. And there are some environments, but like I don't think most shops are filled with people that are playing that way.
No.
But when you throw
I know it's been big around us because we've had so many tournaments going on for that.
Yep.
But we also luckily have people that play the competitive formats, even if they bring that deck over to play at more of a jankier table or more of a, I don't want to use the word casual, but like people that are building a slower roll deck style. They're cool about it. Like they're not being jerks.
No.
But that probably isn't the way it is everywhere.
What I find interesting, I think this goes back to being a good player, is like we just said, a lot of the people in our card shop are really into 1v1.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of taking out cards and putting them back in to make their 1v1 deck a multiplayer deck, they just say, let's roll with it.
Right.
Yep.
But then they steamroll us. I mean, and I think that just shows the level of knowing your deck, knowing how to play the game, and knowing what resources you have, what you don't have compared to the other three players at the table. They do have. I mean, three players have a Soul Ring. I don't. How do I do better than them? And they definitely do. I've been steamrolled by a few 1v1 decks before.
I know I've had a few of them sit down and they're like, this is a 1v1 deck. I'm like, well, what do you have in there that's not legal for multiplayer? Like, I have a Primeval Titan in here. I'm like, whatever. Go for it. Play that Primeval Titan. I don't care. You know, it's three of us on you. You drop that prime time, and we're just going to kill you off for doing it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're playing with people that are relatively reasonable, then it winds up being not a big deal. I'm just curious how much that's going to shape the average game, because maybe if you are only playing against those people, then do you have to be like, okay, well, if the only games I can find are against these people that are playing these kind of 1v1 style decks, then if you don't want to just get bludgeoned every time, you probably have to tweak your deck too, and then that really limits what decks you can play. If you know you're not playing Doran the Siege Tower, then you're not playing Varlaws the Scar Stripe. You're stuck using probably a blue deck and a real fast blue deck that's designed just to get to combos and control.
It might come down to the point where you'll have to talk to your players that you're playing with and just say, look, guys, things are getting out of control. You sit down, you know, I'm playing a casual deck. Let's play casual decks. This is getting a little bit overboard. You know, I have the funds. I can build that deck just as good as you can and stomp you every game, and then you're just going to create enemies and people are going to start not liking each other.
Sure.
And that's how playgroups disband.
And
I mean,
and it's
that's
always
not good for the community.
Yes.
And that's always been an issue with Commander, is power level. I think the rise of 1v1 and maybe the rise of competitive is going to make that an even bigger issue moving forward.
Well, I'm not even going to just say with the rise of that. I've noticed over the past 4 or 5 years I've been playing with you guys, we started off low. We tweaked them up really high. We went back down to low, and now we're starting to creep up into that high range again.
Yeah.
And I think it just happens as more people come in, you have to kind of adjust your play style.
What the trend for me is, and I think this is a little bit for you guys too, we all came in first of all, it's just not good decks. It wasn't like we were like tweaking them down. When you first started playing, you just don't build a good deck. We ratcheted those decks up because we figured out how to play them and how to build decks. Then we intentionally lowered them back down because we all kind of built theme-based decks.
Yep.
Which we then figured out how to make good.
So what do we have to do? I'm confused now.
I'm not sure either where to go from there, but like because we definitely all have theme-based decks that someone can sit down with what they think is their good deck, and they're still going to get beat by Dramoka or by Reki History Kamigawa, which you would think is you shouldn't lose to Reki History Kamigawa, but you can. I mean, it happens. Just you can really tune a janky deck and still make it good.
Yep.
So you're right. We definitely are part of that. I don't want to say problem, but like it's something we all have to be conscious of. And moving forward, it's going to be something that you have to continue to be conscious of.
And I think it just goes back to something that we've all kind of done. We have that super casual deck. We have that, moderately casual deck. We have that not so quite casual deck. And then we have that competitive deck.
Yep.
We all have decks like that where they kind of fall into a beginner, moderate, expert professional
Yeah.
level. And by no means am I saying we are professionals, because
Right.
we're not.
So speaking of professionals, I got a thing for you guys. Guy I play Modern with he's been jamming all the PPTQs and whatever to try and get for the Pro Tour from Minneapolis this year. And he literally asked 3 of us at the shop if we would go with him because it's a team event.
Oh, nice.
So
You
he's
all
trying,
have to qualify for it, though.
We don't know if that's how it works or not.
I
or if
think
it's
you
just
do.
one person does and then you get your team.
I think
It's something we're looking into right now.
Well, awesome. That would be very cool.
No,
What
I don't
would you
want to. I
play?
already played pros before. It wasn't a fun day.
would you play, because it's what, standard, modern, legacy.
I'd play Modern if I had a choice.
Gotcha.
If worse comes to worse, I'll jam Standard, whatever. They're not going to rely on me then. That's
Right,
all I'm going to
right,
say.
Right. Well, cool. Well, let us know what you find out about that.
Yeah.
All right. So the next one, speaking of teammates,
Yeah.
the nice perfect segue into on Commanderin podcast, episode 118, they had guest Ethan Fleischer. He was the lead designer of Commander 2014 and 2016, and he was on the teams for 2013 and 2015. And he said, his exact quote was, "We'll see partners sooner rather than later." Meaning more partner commanders. So at the very least, we can assume we'll get them the next, I would guess, 2 years. Sooner rather than later, I would assume means 2 to 3 years. I mean, 3 years, I'd say at the outset.
Yeah, maybe. I bet we get them before 2020.
But, I mean, I would bet that means he's seen new partners. Like, what is what I bet that means.
Yeah.
Unless they're going to do something along the lines of putting them in the deck as with the clause of as a partner, but nothing to actually partner them up with, like in the new ones for next
Sure.
year. So
That'd
then
be
it gives
cool.
you more options for partners.
That's what I would like to see, is casually throw them in, like, oh, this mono blue guy can be a partner with anything else that already has a partner.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that would be perfect because then they don't have to dedicate their whole year of making it to a partner type decks.
The natural, I have a quick response to that, but first I'm going to say there are some variants they could do on partners. They could do like planeswalker partners, or they could do
No.
But they could, like it would be annoying. Don't get me wrong, but like there's no reason they couldn't put a planeswalker in that says this one has partner, or there's no reason they couldn't even do like an artifact or equipment or something. Like
Okay,
this.
that I could go with, but
Like, I could see-
planeswalkers, no.
But that since there's not a lot to say without it, then we're going to see partners, and I'm assuming we'll see other mechanics start to crop up that we've seen once. We'll see them start popping up again, like experience and whatever.
Experience would be another nice one.
Yeah.
But kind of a prediction here, and I'll say this is, it seems like we had integration this year in Standard with Commander, meaning the Commander sets were all tribal, and then that came out roughly the same time Ixalan did, that was very heavily tribal based.
Yep.
And we
It had white vampires versus white vampires. That wasn't a coincidence. I
Nope.
mean, that was designed that way. But I would wager moving forward, we see a lot more Commander decision making in Standard, meaning like when they make Standard, they're making things specifically with Commander in mind. It's their biggest format or second biggest format at the very least.
Yep.
And I would bet that when the new CEO came in a couple of years ago, and we're just now seeing the cards that they were probably developing when he first came in, he looks at those numbers and says, "Oh, Commander's one of your biggest formats.
in your top 3, we'll say.
Why are you guys not taking advantage of that everywhere else?" And I know Morrow doesn't really like having the overlap between formats, but if the CEO says, "No, you need to pitch more to Commander players because they buy a lot of product," he can't say no to that then. And
That's true.
So I think we've seen the first wave of that with Ixalan, and my prediction is moving forward, we're going to see a lot more stuff in Standard that affects Commander, including, it wouldn't shock me to see that, why couldn't they throw partner text on a legend in Standard?
That'd be cool.
Because it's not like, I forgot the name, who's the mono-white vampire? Mavern Fane. It's not like Mavern Fane is strong
No.
as it is. You staple partner can be a partner on there. That changes absolutely nothing about Mavern Fane's playability in Standard. It doesn't make this card but it's still not a great card for Commander. You could easily do that.
If they did that for Standard, my prediction for that would be it would have to be more of a mechanic like Soulbound, where it can still be attached to another creature, but then have the rules text in it that says this can also be partnered as a commander. something along those lines, so it's still playable in Standard with that extra ability.
It's functional with that clause.
Yes,
But it wouldn't be not functional if it said partner on it.
but it just doesn't do anything for
Right.
you in Standard.
But that, I mean, I think that could be okay. Like, there's no reason. Like I said, you could put it on Maverick Fane and it wouldn't affect the card, but it wouldn't make it worse either. Like,
Yeah,
it wouldn't be overpowered in Commander while simultaneously not making it worse in Standard.
Right.
So I think it wouldn't surprise me to see that kind of thing pop up a little more frequently. Because if you think about it, for the most part, a lot of the legendary text on cards in Standard also is meaningless. No one's going to be running 4 Maverick Veins for the most part, or how many? What's
4 of the gods from Amonkhet.
Yeah,
Well, except for
Scarab
Hazoret.
God maybe, but
yeah, except for Hazoret.
yeah. But like, what's the? I forgot her name. The green black Merfolk legend that just came out.
No, that's
green
not.
blue.
Green blue. Sorry.
I was gonna say green
Taya.
black. I'm like, that's Vraska
Tashana?
that we're talking about,
Tashana,
right?
Tashana, Voice of Thunder. Shana's a good card. She's also like 26 mana to cast or something. Like, you're not,
I think it's 9.
7,
Seven.
5 in Simic.
but you're not going to be running a ton of those in Standard simultaneously. You're not going to be putting a bunch of them in play. Like, legendary text on cards a lot of times is kind of superfluous. It doesn't really do anything. So that's not that much different than putting partner on a card. I mean, it is different, but like, it's not that much different.
I see what you're saying, and I get both sides of your argument.
Yeah.
Like, why put it on there if you're cracking packs for a draft? Well, why does it say partner?
And it can cause confusion for sure. That's
Right.
an argument. But I think if they're looking at the math of we want to appeal to more Commander players, like I could see them doing it. I'm not saying they're going to, but like I could see that.
Yeah, because I would hate to see them do that. Start putting in rares and mythics, and it turns into conspiracy in Standard,
Sure.
where you're pulling jank for what you're looking for Standard, but then it's meant for something else.
What are you talking about? You don't like cracking that mythic conspiracy card every time you open a conspiracy pack?
You know, if I had a cube, it wouldn't bother me, but
It bugs me too.
And they found a good balance this time where like the Commander playable stuff is also good in Standard. So it wasn't
Yes.
like it was wasted text on the cards, but I just think we'll see more overlap moving forward. So the next thing I think I want to hit about here a little bit.
Before we move on,
Sure.
let's quickly go back to Chris's comment about the Team Pro Tour.
Yep.
Found the website where they announced it.
Okay.
Trios can qualify for our special Pro Tour 25th Anniversary Team Trios Pro Tour through Pro Club status, Pro Tour Team Series, Team Grand Prix, Sunday PTQs at those Team Grand Prix, and special regional Pro Tour qualifiers for Team Unified Standard.
So you have to do it
You
as
have to
a
go
team.
as a team
Okay.
to qualify as a team.
I'll bring it up to the guy who came up and asked me if I'd join his team. So
Yep.
All right. So talking about like partner as a mechanic, I would imagine going forward we're going to see more like Ixalan, for example. Cat Tribal wasn't a thing prior to Ixalan. There was no white vampires. You know, you really couldn't make a white vampire deck, or at least a white black one.
You mean Vampire Tribal?
You could make a vampire deck, but you couldn't do it with white.
You just said Cat Tribal.
Sorry,
Nixon.
I'm
confused.
Cat Tribal wasn't a thing, and you couldn't do vampires with white. Really.
Okay.
Yep.
And Ixalan changed both of those two things. Those are now viable EDH archetypes, or at least viable decks. Same thing with pirates. Like pirates wasn't playable, but you could build a pirates deck.
Pirates.
But like, right. You could build a Ramirez de Petro deck that was awful. You can build a fun, playable pirate deck right now. So I would imagine, again, looking to the future, we'll see energy at some point, I would bet, coming back. And one more block of energy probably makes an energy commander
Maybe
viable.
we might see energy. I don't know. There's been so much complaints I've seen about energy that it's a broken mechanic.
It's definitely not popular among standard players, for sure. But like, you could easily do it in Commander.
Yep.
In a Commander set, you could easily do energy. Vehicles seem to be evergreen moving forward. At least we've got them in two out of 3 sets.
Yeah, I suppose if the plane allows it, then there'll probably be at least 1 or 2 vehicles on it.
I mean, so if your Depala deck is no longer something where like, well, it's static. I've got these few vehicles. Like people that have morph decks. Like you had a long gap between cons coming out, and was it Time Spiral Block where you had a few morphs?
Somewhere around in their future site area.
And there was
yeah.
nothing else in there. That was a desert for morphs. Not the case if you're playing Depala vehicles. Like there's a good chance you're going to get a couple vehicles every year.
Is that going to make Boros a viable deck?
No.
There's still
Challenge accepted.
there's still a lot of limitations, but I think Depala's an interest. She fixes a lot of the problems inherent in Boros.
I think with Ixalan, Depala is a much more easier commander to build because, I mean, Luke, one of our old hosts, tried a Depala deck, and his biggest thing was there's just not enough vehicles. Even playing all the vehicles at that time, and that was through Aether Revolt, he felt like there wasn't enough.
A lot of the vehicles back then didn't have enough for commander neither.
Right.
They just weren't powerful enough to do what you needed them to do.
Yep.
But now we got a few more Ixalan and probably get a few more Rivals. So like a year or 2 or 3 from now, that might vastly change how strong Depala is.
Yeah, thinking back on what I just said, depending on the set that they come out with, the plane that you're on, you could do almost anything. Because I think of there's a ship in Ixalan right now that's a vehicle.
Yeah,
you could just go that route.
Yeah, boats can be vehicles.
Yeah.
Ixalan added 5 vehicles.
I mean, it does. At one point in time, that was. I mean, it's just accepted right now that equipment decks are an archetype in Commander. That wasn't the case at one point in time. There just wasn't enough equipment.
Right.
So I would imagine we'll get to the point where vehicles are kind of the same way.
I could go with that.
Yeah, it makes the game
see
interesting.
That. Yeah, I would love to see that.
So are there any other particular mechanics you guys can think of that you'd like to see beefed up like that, or do you think will happen? Because I think it's going to happen.
I would like to see more experience generals. I think that was a really cool mechanic. Some of it was sort of broken, but I think they could tune it and make it better going forward.
I'd like to see more of that as well.
Yeah, I can't really think of anything as of right now, per se, that I want them to come back with or revisit. But for what they're doing right now, I like how it's going.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how about kind of the opposite of that? Mechanics that get weakened as we move forward. The one that I always think of is indestructible. Indestructible is not the same as it once was.
I forgot that was even a thing. It's not really something I ever think about anymore.
But it was a big deal at one point in time. I mean, it was a big deal when I first started playing. Like making something indestructible was tough to deal with, and it's just not anymore.
No, there's so many exile abilities now; it's unreal.
Or even just stuff like Darksteel Mutation or Imprison of the Moon. So there are so many more ways to deal with indestructible that there wasn't. And I tried to think of like, okay, so if I'm like projecting out 10 years in the future, are there any other mechanics that I think are going to get bad? And I couldn't really think of anything specifically. I was wondering about evasion. Like flying has already kind of gotten to the point where there's a lot of decks have flyers.
Mm-hmm.
There's still some that are vulnerable. Like my Recce deck has 2 flyers, so I'm vulnerable to flying for sure. I would imagine most of those cat tribal decks have a tough time dealing with flyers.
Which they shouldn't. Cats should have reach. I mean, they can jump like 40 feet in the air.
They climb trees.
What you do is just write reach on all your cat cards.
And make sure it's a foil deck, so you can just use a Sharpie.
And do it in really small letters, though, on the bottom, like how Wizards tries to trick me with some cards.
But I wonder, like, if flying as a mechanic, it probably has gotten somewhat weaker over the years, I would think.
I wouldn't necessarily say weaker, but it's easier to deal with.
Yeah. Like talking about, I got a moat this summer for a deck, and I was all psyched for it. You know, it's moat. That's an iconic card. It was not cheap to trade for, to acquire. I was shocked at how often it was a dead card in my hands. Now, there was times I played it a couple times where it was effective.
Yep.
But there was just as many, if not more times, where I'd have it in my hand and be like, this does me no good to play right now because there's so many flyers on the board. So I think I wouldn't say it's bad. Flying's still great. I love flying, and I will run flying creatures when I can. But if everybody thinks that and everybody does that, it makes it less effective.
I could see in the future they start giving us more cards that deal with hexproof. Abilities to turn off hexproof of creatures, just so you can get rid of stuff.
That would be very nice. I mean, right now we have Arcane Lighthouse,
Glaring
Spotlight, and the archetype of whichever one does hexproof.
Yep.
Gives you hexproof, everyone else loses hexproof.
Well, you also had a few red spells that remove indestructible. You have the green is Bonds of Mortality, the enchantment that removes indestructible.
Yep.
And this kind of segues into the next one I was going to mention about future guesses, but that's one of my future guesses. Is we're going to see you'll see more mechanics in Commander that deal with problem things, whether it's hexproof or I would bet if you were in the room when they designed Teferi's Protection, really, like I would bet the word Cyclonic Rift was mentioned 100 times during the course of that creation. Like I would bet Teferi's Protection was designed specifically to deal with Rift.
Really?
I would bet because it does.
It does.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that was the case, and if we're not going to maybe see moving forward a few cards like that are designed to deal with Rift or designed to deal with particularly problematic cards or things that they think are kind of an issue in the game. They don't want to ban, but they also you need responses.
I could go with that.
Because short of a counterspell, there was no response to Rift.
No.
But now there is. There's one card that does it, but like there's one now.
Yeah, I can't think of anything that responds to Rift. It's just like, sure, I guess.
Right. But they could also easily print a card that said if a spell or ability would send a permanent to your hand, ignore that spell or ability. Like they could until the end of turn or something. Like they could print that. That would probably be legal within the rules. I'm no expert, but that sounds like it would be legal.
Something similar. I guess my wording would be can't be removed from the battlefield this turn.
Sure. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a few more of those things come down that deal with Rift or deal with, I don't know what else would be problematic, but I think we'll see more of that.
Yeah.
Because once upon a time, if a spell said the spell cannot be countered, well, that's it. It can't be countered. But now we have things that exile spells.
Yep. Or they return them to your hand or anything
just
like
clear
that.
the stack. Yep.
Not a lot of them. And you probably don't need a lot of them. But there's a few of them. And so I think moving forward, we're going to see more of that kind of thing too.
I think we'll see less and less of protection.
Definitely like protection from black.
Protection from something. Yep.
I can't think of the last time.
That.
They may have even made this.
I looked it up.
Okay.
I think they reprinted Unquestioned Authority and the original Conspiracy is the last card I can think of.
So the last time it was in Standard was Emrakul, the Promised End.
Oh, sure.
But otherwise it was printed in Khan's block on Pristine Skywise. It says, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, untap it. It gains protection from the color of your choice until end of turn.
So Khan's block would have been right around the time that Conspiracy came out.
Yep. Master of Waves and Soldier of the Pantheon from the Theros block both have protection.
It's a weird one. The protection from multicolored, isn't that
multicolored is
Soldier?
Pantheon. Master of Waves is red.
Because he's a 2/2.
Yep. He's a 2/1.
2/1.
Storm Breath Dragon and Mistcutter Hydra.
And Theros.
And then Dragon's Maze. So yeah, I mean, Khan's block was the last time it looks like it was printed in Standard. Granted, I have not scrolled through the 12 pages on Scryfall to look through it, but I have it ordered by set, and those are the most recent sets that aren't reprint sets.
Well, they've also intentionally gotten rid of Regeneration.
I haven't seen that in a long time.
And that was a conscious decision to not print it anymore. So now what you'll see is Indestructible till end of turn. That's what their replacement for Regeneration was.
Was Regeneration really that hard of a mechanic to use, though?
For beginners, it's hard to understand.
Think apparently for beginners, it was a problem. I don't quite know why, but
okay.
So
they just get a bubble.
Yeah.
When they die, they become tapped. That's pretty much what happens.
Yep.
But I do remember people seeing trying to regenerate your creatures to tap it. So I have seen goofy things with it before, but I don't know. You see goofy things with every kind of mechanic. So.
Yep.
Be good in an Inspired? Is that the one where it untaps and it does something?
Yeah.
There you go.
But they have to die to become tapped.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Or take lethal damage. They don't actually die to get death triggers. So I guess we're talking about things that are complex right there, I guess. Any more future guesses or things you guys think they're going to be moving towards in the future?
I hope they do 2 Commander products a year.
That would be great. I was actually kind of thinking that too.
Like, do the decks, do the 4 decks in half of the year, then do like an Arsenal type product in the other half of the year.
I could do that. I was worried you were going to say like 2 sets of decks because I think it's going to flood the market too much.
No, do 1 set of decks and 1 like from the Vault Commander, our Commander's Arsenal.
Yeah.
Once a year too. So you get 2 sets of Commander specific products versus, oh look, Iconic Masters has all the Kamigawa dragons that I already have 2 or 3 of. Oh, I don't really need another Praetor, stuff like that.
Okay.
I think we're going to keep seeing them intentionally try to address some weaknesses in colors. I would imagine red is going to keep getting Impulse Draw.
Oh, yeah.
White.
Give me the draw.
Yeah. White this time in the cat deck got Alms Collector, which, does it have flash? Is that what it is? When an opponent would draw 2 or more cards, you draw one, and they draw one.
Yep.
So which is kind of like almost like a land tax kind of effect. If they have more land than you, you can put a land in. If they draw a card, you can draw. So I bet that might be the mechanic we see with white as a draw, because it doesn't really affect standard, because there's just not a lot of people that are bulk drawing cards in standard. But in Commander, that would be kind of a nice thing for white to have.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to see them. There doesn't seem to have been an attempt in the past to like fix the problems with color pairs, and I think we're going to see them trying to address it a little bit more.
I hope they don't go too deep into it and screw something up.
We don't want to mess it up either. Like, there needs to be weaknesses.
Yep.
But I also think Boros doesn't need to be as weak as it is.
Sure it does.
Yeah.
you need some whipping boy.
I need a challenge is what I need.
I you know what, I do like the fact that Boros is a challenge. I think it is. That's not a bad thing necessarily, but it could be a little bit better and still be a challenge.
I suppose I could get behind that one.
Anything else you guys are seeing down the road you want to talk about?
Not off the top of my head.
Nope.
It's a lot of stuff we covered.
Yeah, I hope that the game doesn't go down the wrong path. That's my biggest fear.
So we're going to do a show in a couple weeks here where we're going to do basically a big round table and get a bunch of people in a room and have them talk about the state of the game.
And I apologize to everyone up front if people randomly come barging in and hoot and holler, because
we are recording at the card shop.
Yes,
it's going to be chaotic.
I have a feeling that the owner's going to come troll us every now and then.
But one of the things I'm going to ask is how you think about the state of the game right now. Like, what do you think of this year and how the game looks? So, but since we're going to be dealing with a bunch of yahoos that night,
Sorry, everybody.
Right, I might as well ask you guys. Like, so what are your thoughts on the state of the game right now and where it's heading?
The game right now I think is sitting perfect.
Yeah, it's a very healthy format right now.
It's very diverse. I notice when I sit down and play, you don't see repeats of stuff. It changes, which I enjoy. I hate it when you're sitting in a stale meta.
Yeah. I think the heightened popularity of 1v1 in our area has helped that. You get these guys that don't care about using a 1v1 deck in a multiplayer game, or do take the time to take out their Primeval Titan for their Soul Ring, but it's more interesting deck building because it's more tuned to that 1v1, but they want to challenge themselves and make it, see if I can compete with 3 other decks that are tuned for not
if
not
I can
1v1.
take out 3 other players with mine when I'm only meant to take out 1, then I must have something going right.
What I also wonder if maybe you don't get a degree of, well, I've built this 1v1 deck, that's going to be my spikier competitive deck, and then it allows them to kind of blow off that particular, steam valve that way. Whereas before, if they wanted to like get their spike on, they had to do it multiplayer in Commander, and maybe
you hunt down the player who made you salty 3 weeks ago.
Right.
But whereas you want to play?
Whereas right now they would do that in 1v1 and then feel they can play something a little bit looser in the multiplayer game. So we mentioned that as being maybe a problem moving forward, but that also might be a solution. Maybe that's a way that's going to solve a few of the issues with power level in the game.
Yep.
So I agree with you guys. I think the game's at a pretty good place this year. I think we had a lot of good Commander cards this year. I know people have complained a lot about Standard right now, but like I think Ixalan's been great for Commander.
Oh yeah.
I think all the sets this year were. I think Amonkhet had a lot of cool Commander cards too. The Commander set was good. We got a lot of good reprints we wanted. It's been a very good year for Commander in general.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any like cards I'm feeling like need to be banned. Everyone jokes about Rift, and I wouldn't mind seeing it banned just because it's
annoying.
It's annoying, but like I don't think it's broken.
I can't think of anything that needs to be banned neither. I haven't seen anything broken yet. So.
And Protean Hulk got unbanned, and we just haven't seen it played very much.
I tried it once.
No, I haven't seen it anywhere. Any green decks, it's like I'm expecting it, and it just never comes.
But that could be people that just don't want to play that in our meta too. Whereas I could, if someone told me, oh, it's rampant in my meta and it's busted, I would believe you. Like I don't think you're a liar. I could absolutely see it being broken.
There was a reason it was banned for so long.
But beyond that, it feels the format feels really healthy right now. So, all right, I think that is all we have for Commander Central today. We'll be back next week. And signing off for now, I'm Dana.
I'm Max.
And I'm Chris.